It's 4 days to Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. It's 4 days to Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. And just as I promised, tonight I'm going to be reviewing Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. I didn't really see this film until the same night that I watched Halloween 2. And I already knew about the whole thing that Michael Myers wasn't in this one. I kind of already knew the plot since I've seen reviews of it. But screw it, I decided to watch it anyway, because I heard it's actually pretty good. What I do remember, though, is the first time that I heard about this film was when I was reading that Leonard Maltin movie guide. I was kind of well-versed in like his review ratings by that point, and I knew that he rated this movie a bomb. So the first thing I thought of was, oh, well, obviously this movie is terrible. And then I started talking about how Michael Myers was not in it, right? Which made me think of like, well, why'd they do that? Why did they decide not to have Michael in one film? And then I saw other reviews about how originally Michael Myers was supposed to die at the end of Halloween 2, like from that explosion in the hospital, right? Where like that movie was basically like Terminator 2 of the Halloween franchise, where it got like bigger, bloodier, moderately bloodier, a bit scarier, and well, there were explosions in the film. From what I read, that film was supposed to be the end of Michael Myers. And then John Carpenter would like move on to do like more stories about Halloween as like an anthology series where like each installment would be about like some different characters, some different threat, and all of it taking place on or around Halloween night. So unfortunately, this wasn't the case, and we ended up getting like the Thorn trilogy. Then the H20 timeline, the Rob Zombie films, and the Blumhouse movies, which I'll get into more on that in a minute. For what it's worth, Season of the Witch itself is a pretty good movie. It's been considered like a cult classic for a while now. And even though like it doesn't technically have Michael Myers, although he does have a cameo like in a trailer for the original Halloween film on a television set. Like, there are some hallmarks to the original two films. Like, there's some dark lighting where people are jumping out of the shadows, some wide camera angles, and, well, there's even technically, like, a main villain or, like, main muscle bad guy who moves almost exactly like Michael Myers, which makes sense because the actor who played Michael Myers, Dick Warlock, he also plays that guy in the suit, which I thought was pretty genius. But the story itself is great, where it features a doctor named Dan Chalice, I believe, where he stumbles upon like this whole conspiracy to like murder all these children and their families during Halloween night, using these special Halloween masks that emit this frequency that basically melts their heads and turns the insides into bugs. The fact that they were doing that like during Halloween 3, I think it kind of drove the point home that in horror, like nobody should be safe, right? The characters of Dan Chalice are great. I honestly think that if they ever used him for another installment, he could have been like basically another version of Loomis, and because like he's pretty badass in this film. Like, because later on in the film, you find out that a lot of the henchmen, including the one that Dick Warlock plays as, like they're androids. and he actually goes toe to toe with I think more than one of them. The other main character, Ellie Smith, I believe her name was, who was the daughter of basically the guy who gets killed in the opening. I mean, there's not much for me to say, but like she does kind of get the ball rolling because her father was basically investigating the company Silver Shamrock and their masks. So she kind of meets with Dan and talks about how like maybe her father wasn't crazy. And she even says that like she did some detective work to figure out like what her father was doing, where he was going, and that's what leads them to Silver Shamrock. That's in this kind of backwater town called Santa Mira in California. The owner or CEO of Silver Shamrock, Colonel Cochran, like that dude's a great villain. Like every moment that he's on screen is some of the best moments in the film, in my opinion. Like, and by the time that Dan figures out his plan, and Cochran like explains it to him and like explains his motivation to it, like he kind of comes off as a James Bond villain, which is kind of funny because in the first two films, Dr. Loomis is played by Donald Pleasence, who was also Blofeld in the original James Bond films like Thunderball. No, honestly, like Cochran is one of the coolest villains I've seen in like a horror movie, just because of how charismatically evil he is. That like he's willing to kill like all these children and their families in order to appease like his gods or the planets. Aside from Cochran himself, like my other favorite scene in this film is like when they're preparing to execute their plan, and there's this whole montage of all these major cities in America, like New York, Los Angeles, Omaha, Nebraska, where all these kids are picking up their Silver Shamrock masks. And all of it is like this whole mounting of dread to the fact that all these kids and possibly their parents are going to die from that frequency that Silver Shamrock is going to play. And just the cherry on top is the fact that they play the Silver Shamrock jingle, which that's never not going to be catchy. I won't even consider this a horror movie, at least not fully. Like, I'd call it more of like a mystery thriller kind of, because it's basically about like this doctor and a love interest like unraveling this whole conspiracy, and the music is fantastic. Deviating away from like the original Michael Myers theme where it goes like do 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 do. I kind of like the whole sort of like science fiction-y synth music that they go with here, which really fits considering that they're that like the henchmen are animatronics and everything. The kills are brutal. Like the opening kill of Ellie's father, one of the androids, like he does something where it kind of looks like he first gouges the guy's, or he first gouges the man's eye out, and then like just rips his nose up. And the way that it's described is that like his skull was torn apart. Later on in the film, like a guy's head gets ripped clean off, and then of course there's those scenes where anyone who's in contact with those Silver Shamrock chips, like their heads get like either torn apart or melted. Really, only one or two problems that I have with this film, and they happen like at the very, very end of it. Like when Dan eventually escapes from Cochran, he frees Ellie, and they decide to turn on the frequency and then just dump an entire box full of those Shamrock chips just into like the main lab room place. I feel like the whole power of the chips are kind of inconsistent. The first 2 times you see the chips in action, like they basically melt a person's face and conjure bugs, right? And I don't know if if it works differently because the henchmen are androids or whatever. But when the frequency starts up and Dan dumps that entire box of chips, instead of like melting their faces or anything, like I guess just short circuits the henchmen and they fall to the ground, right? And they also like fry some machinery. Which, that one, I suppose, makes more sense. But then for some reason, that causes, like, a chain reaction, which causes, like, the big Stonehenge block that Silver Shamrock stole to start glowing. And it ends up basically going Raiders of the Lost Ark on Cochrane. The Stonehenge zaps this blue light at him, which makes it look like he's covered in this white paste, and then like his body just vanishes. Okay, so the Stonehenge block got pissed off for no reason at all, or maybe as Cochrane side, like the gods or whoever that he was trying to please, got pissed off at him, so they decided to kill him. That also doesn't exactly explain like the inconsistency with how people are killed off by those like microchips, or at least that's the way I thought about it. But then there's this one more nitpick. I originally went through the film thinking that Ellie was an android the entire time, right? But then I started thinking, well, Ellie wouldn't be helping Dan this whole time if she was a robot working for Cochrane. And I'm pretty sure that the moment she gets dragged away by those henchmen in suits is the last time we see the real Ellie and she's replaced by a robot. Like, that room that Dan goes into and frees Ellie from the bed, that's a robot. Or at least that's what I'm thinking. But then it also raises the question, well, if that's the moment that she was a robot, then why didn't she stop Dan from killing Cochrane or the other henchmen, right? All he did was tell her to stay there, and that's it. Even if that was the last time that we saw Ellie, and during that time she was replaced by a robot, like, I'm pretty sure at some point she would have tried to stop him from basically upending the plans to basically just massacre a bunch of children across the country. So the first one about the inconsistency about the Stonehenge's powers, I can see how that can be a little bit subjective in my case, but this one where Ellie gets turned into an android but doesn't stop Dan, like, I don't understand that at all. But aside from that, the movie was great. And like the ending was also pretty cool, where like Dan goes to that one like tow place like Ellie's father did at that beginning, and like he's screaming for the news stations to shut off the broadcast, and like he's frantic because like he knows what will happen because he's already seen like the chip kill a kid and then kill the parents. And it basically ends like open-ended on like, did the broadcast get stopped or not? And I thought it was a genius way of ending it because like it raises that question of like, did he succeed or did a bunch of children, like whoever was watching the broadcast, end up dying? And that kind of loops me back to the first two films. I honestly believe that that if John Carpenter like sandwiched Halloween 1 and 2 together as like one giant movie, maybe cut a few things out, and then like that would have been the first Halloween, and then Season of the Witch was technically Halloween 2. I think we could have actually gotten like that anthology series that he wanted. But because we had already had 2 Halloween movies with Michael Myers, people were obviously expecting Michael Myers to be in the third one somehow. And that's why this is technically the only spinoff that we had with no Myers in it. But that's the hill that I'm going to die on. If only they combined the first 2 films. I understand that they probably had no plans to like even do Halloween 2. But like it was just a massive success that they kind of had to. I understand that like Halloween 2 came out 3 years after the first Halloween, but it's still I still can't help but wonder like what might have been, especially because I'm pretty sure I mentioned this way back during my Halloween Ends review or one of my Halloween film reviews that like people constantly complain about like Hollywood is out of ideas, right? How all they do is they keep on rehashing the same old plot. And, well, as much as I agree with that, like, I'm sorry, but we as the audience have no one to blame but ourselves. And Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is a prime example as to why we don't get new material. Because they did that, and at the time, audiences didn't like it. Like, they freaking hated Season of the Witch because it had no Michael Myers. That's why that's why Halloween 4 literally has the subtitle "The Return of Michael Myers," because the filmmakers knew how pissed off people were that he wasn't in the third film. John Carpenter wanted to do something different with the film franchise, and people didn't like it. But I still stand by the fact that if they either cut both movies down a little bit and just sandwiched them together, and that could have been the first film, and then Season of the Witch was the second, then nobody would have minded him doing an entire anthology series with different people, different threats, different thematic elements. Like, hell, he could have... he probably could have done, like, a different state for each movie, and it still could have been great. But... or, hell, like... another kind of route they could have gone was, like, not do Halloween 2 at all. Like, have the story of Michael Myers end on an open-ended note by having him escape into the night with that lingering feeling that he's always going to be out there. That could have been awesome if they ended the whole Michael Myers arc that way, where Michael Myers gets shot off the balcony and and Dr. Loomis looks over, he's not on the ground. So, and like Laurie and Loomis are left wondering like, where is he? Along with like his heavy breathing throughout the house. I mean, that like he's always going to be there, always watching. And that will actually fit in well with the ending of Halloween 3, because that one also ended on like an open-ended route of not ever knowing if that final broadcast ever got shut off. And John Carpenter could have continuously made films that ended in that fashion, where like basically having a zinger of fear, of like there's always going to be like that shred of doubt that something in the dark is going to get you. To paraphrase, the audience kind of dug their own grave with this one, which is a shame, because I honestly think that they could still make the anthology series work. Like, even if they didn't want to do like full on movies for anthology, like they could still do like a Blumhouse produced anthology TV show, kind of similar to I think it's called like American Horror Stories. Like I don't think they need to do like an entire season's worth kind of like what the flagship American Horror Story series does, but like do it like one episode per idea. Where like say if it was like a TV show, they could have done like episode 1 was about Michael Myers, episode 2 was Season of the Witch, and like from then on they do all these different crazy ideas, right? I still think that can work. Like, where you basically have like a monster of the week. And I'm pretty sure that Goosebumps did that too, like back in the day. That could have been awesome. But I don't know. Something tells me that they're not gonna do that, considering I'm pretty sure that we're gonna get more Michael Myers films. Just not from Blumhouse. I think that's what they said. That Blumhouse is finished doing Michael Myers movies. So I got no doubt that we're gonna see Michael again eventually. But just to think what could have been if everybody just saw past the whole wanting to see Michael Myers on the big screen for a third time. Like, what we could have gotten instead of, like, 15 films of Michael just killing people. And that's coming from a guy who loves gory movies and loves Michael Myers just killing people. But that's it for this review. And be sure to tune in next week where I have a special video planned for Halloween night. Bye, everyone.